Freshly back from the Midwest Mini Swap, a very fun miniature wargaming swap meet that happens about twice a year in New Berlin, Wisconsin, hosted by my man Tim. And this year, it was actually a little bit different because I was there as a seller. Now, it might not look like I was there as a seller, but some things got sold. Myself, Nick, Sean, Amanda, we all piled into my Jeep, and my old Jeep, it got us there. And we sold some Warhammer. My goal was to sell enough Warhammer, to sell the stuff that wasn't sparking joy and then buying things that do spark joy. Essentially just taking my pile of shame and changing its color, essentially. And it was actually wildly successful. I was selling a good amount of Warhammer. We actually brought some of our terrain because we make terrain every single month. And we do so much test printing to make sure that everything works correctly and perfectly. And so we brought buckets and buckets of terrain and just to see what would happen because we just have it and it's taken up a lot of space and people got a kick out of it. A bunch of people were pawing through the bins and the buckets, finding all of these little cool things to glue onto bases. It was a really fun time being there as a vendor. I saw a lot of familiar faces amongst the other vendors. And it was a really fun time wheeling and dealing in the world of Warhammer 40,000. A Warhammer swap meet is tons and tons of fun. One thing that I was selling is my Gene Stealer Cult army. It's been years and years and years in the making, but it's never quite clicked. I've had a couple of different color schemes. I've had a couple of different eras of themes for my army to be collected into. And it's just never really worked out. I've played it a couple of times, mostly in 8th edition 40K, and it never hit right. And so I decided, you know what? It might be time to take my Gene Stealer Cult army and turn it into an army that I would rather have. And I didn't know what that army would be. I went in with the goal of selling a bunch of stuff and then coming home with an army. But I didn't know, I was at the mercy of what was at the event. And I actually managed to achieve my goal and come home with a brand spanking new army and some really fun other stuff. One thing that really caught my eye was this. This is the 7th edition Warhammer rulebook. I used to have one of these because I played 7th edition and my copy actually got destroyed in a flood. And so now I have another copy of the worst edition in the history of Warhammer 40,000, 7th edition. Another really frustrating thing is instead of having one big beautiful book, that edition, they had it as 3 separate books, a pretty picture book, a rule book, and a lore book? I don't even remember. But now I have the rules. And so I currently own every edition of Warhammer 40,000. It feels good. Another really fun thing that I saw there is a little bit of Malifaux. This is a crew that I don't have. This is Arcanist's December. I guess this box comes with more than just December, but it's got Euripides, it's got Rasputina, and I've got some additions for the keyword December, but somebody was letting go of their Malifaux, and so I picked up a little bit more Malifaux. Does that mean I'm gonna get on to my Malifaux anytime soon? Yes, depending on what soon means. Other new in-box goodies that were discovered, I got another copy of Aeronautica Imperialis. Never played this game before, but it looks like tons of fun. And I'm a huge fan of the game X-Wing. And so I figure I would like to give this game a try. And why not give it a try with just tons and tons of miniatures? I got this for an absolute steal because it's a dead game, but it's a dead game I would like to give a try to. Really, I got this from one vendor in addition to another fun thing, and that is Adeptus Titanicus. I believe this is a dead game and has been rolled into Legions Imperialis, but I always kind of liked the idea of the big stompy robots, and I know there's a couple of people at my local store who really, really like this game, and so I figure they can show me the ropes. And it comes with 2 Reaver Titans, and for some reason I really, really like Reaver Titans, and I do want to give this game a try. I mean, I can build Stompy, but I can build a little Stompy who can live on my desk. And so I I am perfectly happy to get rid of some bits, a little bit of Gene Stealer Cult, some other Warhammer odds and ends that I happen to have just kicking around. I was holding this, one thing that I sold was 30K heavy weapon batteries that I bought on Forge World like 7 years ago. And I was thinking, they're cool. Do I really want to sell them? And then I thought, these have been in a drawer for the entire 7 years. They never once got played with. They did get painted, but those are gone. But now there is this. And this is very, very exciting. I mean, we got some Warhounds, we got some Reavers, we got some Knight Lancers. I think, yeah, it's just Lancers, Reavers, and Warhounds, and a smattering of terrain, all of the cards, the tokens, the rule books, everything you need to play. This is pretty exciting. But speaking of pretty exciting, one thing that is wonderful about the mini swap is you find the weirdest stuff. I mean, this is people's collections, like their entire collections and their entire history of Warhammer 40,000. And so I found some real weird stuff. These two little pieces of metal, these are turrets from 2nd edition Warhammer Space Marine Razorbacks and Predator tanks. Look at them. They're just chunky, weird metal. I am a sucker for old metal Warhammer. I currently have 2 tubs completely full of old metal Space Marines. And I'm gonna throw these right in the tub, add another like 1/4 pound of metal to the bin. One day I'm gonna put together that box of old hammer. And I was thinking Blood Angels for the longest time, but now I might do the Mantis Warriors, the successor chapter of the White Scars. I would really like to paint them in some greens and some yellows and some buggy all over. And speaking of old, I also got these original plastic Terminators. I think these lived in a weird middle ground between the metal Terminators that look a little bit more 40K and the kind of Space Crusade era of Warhammer 40,000. These are from OG Space Hulk. They are single piece plastic miniatures with the paint caked on there, but I have them now. They are very, very funky looking little eggy Terminators, and I got a full squad of 5 of these suckers. I don't know if Games Workshop used to use a different plastic or they're just so small, but these things are weightless. There is nothing to these miniatures. They're hollow. If I flip these guys around, usually there's vents in the back of the Terminator armor. These guys just have holes. They have plastic holes in them, and that's why they're so light. Adorable. These guys are gonna look really good in my old hammer army one day, but something that's gonna look really good in my modern armies very soon are some Vespid Stingwings. I ran into a guy who was selling a few things from his copies of, what was the name of the kill team that was Vespid versus the Drop Guard? I don't know, but I got the Vespid, and I actually have already put together a 5-man squad for my Tau Kroot army, and these models are phenomenal. My only little critique is they come on bases that they're jumping off of like Imperium debris, and I didn't want them on Imperial debris, I wanted them on like my desert cliffs, and so I had to very carefully sculpt these cliffs right over all of these different metal and window components. But I think in the end, I was able to get something pretty darn convincing. Some pretty big cork towers, but I'm kind of okay with it. I feel like these guys are flying guys, and they're on 28.5mm bases, which are tiny. And so I went a little extravagant on the basing, but I still think they look really good. I got 5 done. I got 5 more on sprue waiting for me to work on these. I only need 5 for my Tau list right now, but I think in the future, I'll definitely be running the Grotmist detachment that was all about bringing Vespid, Kroot, and Tau together in a force. And so, what's it called? Alien Allies? It was something like that, but that is another detachment of Tau that I would really like to run. And these Vespid are gonna help me out so much. One really cool thing on this desk that I did not get at the mini swap are these crashed spaceship debris They've been on this desk for a while because these are the new terrain available at EonsOfBattle.com. And they're not the only thing available at EonsOfBattle.com. On our website, we have all kinds of hobby goodies: Army Painter paints, brushes, texture paste, wet palettes, basing cork, decals, toppers and bits, and we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit, good for any one terrain pack we have ever made, or the brand new one. Our new terrain for November, the Crashed Landers. These spaceships have all the trappings of grimdark futuristic flyers who have met their untimely end, dropping out of the sky to live out their days as dramatic terrain. With weapons, engines, armor, and rivets, these corpses were carrying some precious cargo that never made it to its destination. These ill-fated vehicles were designed by us and are available at EonsOfBattle.com. At the Midwest Mini Swap, I was able to get rid of some odds and ends to pick up some new odds and ends, but my ultimate goal was to leave with my Warhammer junk and come back with a Warhammer army. And I perused all of the vendors, seeing what armies were available for sale, what things were kicking around, and I actually have a lot of Warhammer 40k armies, so some things were off limits. I wasn't gonna do Space Marines, I wasn't gonna do Chaos, I wasn't gonna do Necrons. AdMech had me a little tempted. Tim had his AdMech army for sale, and it was, I think, like 14 Armiger Warglaves, which is really tempting because I like the chicken walkers, but I didn't do AdMech. I decided Eldar. Eldar is kind of a blind spot for me in 40k. I don't know that much about the Eldar range. I've only fought the Eldar a handful of times on the tabletop. But they do have some models that do interest me, and I do like the elves. I've liked them a lot more since I've collected a Dark Eldar army and I've read some Dark Eldar novels, but there was just, the universe provided me a Eldar army and some really, really interesting things. The thing that pushed me over the edge, because I was selling at my booth, but every now and then I would take a little break and do a lap of the vendor hall, and I was waiting for something to catch my eye, and the thing that really pushed me over the edge was 6 of these little baggies of Forge World. These are Eldar Warwalkers, but a very specific Eldar Warwalker. These are Hornet light tanks. This is something that was available from Forge World for a little bit of time, but it is essentially an upgrade of the Warwalker. I have one open right here. Someone, at some point in time, decided that they were gonna go down the rabbit hole of Warwalker spam, or I guess Hornet spam. The only difference between these and the classic Warwalker kit is they have these kind of spiky fins in the back. They have more jetpacks, because I believe these guys were kind of meant to use their bipedal locomotion with the legs, but then also be able to literally fly up into the air. And they have a unique cockpit that I believe this is a cast, or no, this is not a casting, this is an injection molded clear canopy that I think is only for this kit. No, that can't be right, because this part is plastic, not Forge World. But it's, the regular Warwalker kit uses the standard Eldar cockpit, and it just sits in the front, right in front of the cockpit, but then it's open on all sides. This actually fully encloses the pilot, and I don't think that this canopy was used on anything except for this Forge World kit. So it's very unique that way, and I think is just a little upgrade to the Warwalkers, and I really like Warwalkers. My friendly local game store was actually selling Warwalkers for a pretty good price around Christmas time, but I didn't pull the trigger. And it's a good thing I didn't pull the trigger, because now I can pull the trigger on a bunch of Forge World versions of the Warwalker. I don't have any guns, but that's a problem for later, Jay. Right now, I've got the Warwalker bodies, and they're really, really cool. I'm gonna make a couple of them float. I'm gonna make a couple of them walk in over the ground. I'm gonna have to come up with some weapon options, but I really like Warwalkers, and I now have 6. I got 6 of these old school things. Somebody else had an idea, and now I'm picking up where they left off, and this is now my problem. These guys are so cool. I like Warwalkers, and I now have super unique Warwalkers. But these are not the only thing I was able to pick up for an Eldar army. All told, I have 1,500 points of Eldar. I've got some fire dragons. These are classic metal ones. And I believe the new plastic sculpts look pretty much identical to the old metal ones, so I think it'll be nice to have the metal and the plastic, because I do want more than just 5 fire dragons. Then I've got some death spinners. These are the guys who pal around with Morgan Raw, and I do have a Morgan Raw somewhere in this house, but now I've got a metal collection of these guys. Then I've got 9 Wind Riders, the Eldar bikes. I got 9 of these suckers. They're painted up in blue, and I kind of like the blue. I have no idea what I'm gonna do in terms of color scheme for the Eldar. I know Nick had there was a little bit of time where Nick was collecting an Eldar army, and he was going with the color scheme Mimera, which was like a light green and a light blue, and they kind of blended together in the middle. And that was a pretty cool scheme. There's also, is it Ulthway? Where it's a bone color with creeping vines freehanded all over the miniatures. That is also a really, really cool color scheme. I don't know what I'm gonna do with yet, but I now have to make that decision because I have an Eldar army. I was also able to pick up some Eldar Rangers. These are the new plastic Rangers. And I actually really like that the person kept the static grass going over the lip of the base. I think that's just a really nice little touch to these sneaky sniper dudes. And I actually bought Tim, the host of the event, I bought his Howling Banshees. They are very nicely put together, very nicely painted, and I really like Howling Banshees. If anybody remembers the Dawn of War 3 trailer, you get to see some Howling Banshees in that trailer, and they're really, really cool. I got Eldrad Ulthway, one of the new epic heroes for the Eldar. He's missing a couple of fingies, but that's what you get when you buy secondhand used models. And I think that about does it for the Eldar. Most of the points of my army is coming from these Warwalkers, but I am very excited. I'm still working on all of my 40k armies. I am still locked in furious combat with Sean. We're both putting together new 40k armies at the moment. He's doing Emperor's Children, and I am doing the Kroot Tau. But I think as soon as I'm done with the Kroot Tau, I'm gonna be cracking into some Eldar. I'm so glad they got their codex 9 months ago, but they changed from Fate Dice to a new mechanic. And the Fate Dice mechanic was so annoying because you could just substitute a die roll for a different die roll. And so you could literally just take the randomness out of the game. And it made for some real feel bad moments. So I'm like, okay, I've finally done 4 mortal wounds, or I've done 4 wounds to this model. And then you just take the die and you're like, no, you didn't. Automatic save. Do not like that mechanic, but the new mechanic works very similarly where you just have a list of abilities and power-ups that you can have like on deck, and you can just take from them over the course of your turn. I think you get 4 points to spend a turn, and that's just how the Eldar are a cut above the other factions of 40k, but you're not literally not rolling dice. You should be rolling dice if you're playing Warhammer 40,000. I got a bunch of secondhand Eldar, but I also got some new on sprue Eldar. These are the sniper guys on jet bikes. What are you, Wind Riders? They might be Wind Riders, but I got some Wind Riders. So I'm going bike heavy and I'm going Warwalker heavy. Is that a good build for an Eldar army? I have no idea, but it was what was available on the day, and I do like these models a lot. All in all, it was an incredibly successful event. Some really cool miniatures purchased, some miniatures that I am more than fine with seeing leave forever. A friend of mine bought some of my Dark Eldar, and so I'm really excited to keep it in the family. I'm gonna get to visit those models every once in a while when I play them at the local club. But now I am an Eldar player, and an Oldhammer player, and a Titanicus player, and a Malifaux player, and a little bit of Tau player. It's good feeling in the world of Warhammer. The Midwest Mini Swap is a really fun event. It happens about 2 times a year, and they have a Facebook group where Tim updates when the next one is gonna be. And so I would check that out if you're in the Wisconsin area. It's a really fun time, and I think I will go every single time. I don't know if I'm gonna sell stuff every single time, but I'm pretty sure I know I'm gonna buy stuff every single time. I gotta write some Eldar lists. Thanks for watching.